So my name's Kathryn and I'm the Deputy Editor, and today I am interviewing my careers mentor. So, Kath, could you just briefly explain your job for me in a couple of
Yes, hello,
sentences?
Katrin. Thank you for having me. My name's Kathryn Stanczyszyn, and I am the BBC's political reporter based in Birmingham. So I am a regional political specialist. So I cover lots of local politics and regional politics, as well as national politics as well, for a regional audience, for television, for radio, and for online. I also do extra bits of national reporting on general stories as well. So I do some Radio 4, some BBC Breakfast, some 5 Live, and some national television bulletins as well.
Excellent. So, because this is for university students and the University of Birmingham, we don't actually offer a journalism course, so no one's doing journalism there. Could you explain what you did at university and then how you moved into the journalism sector?
Sure. So I went to Birmingham University. I am an alumna of Birmingham, and I still do quite a lot of work with Birmingham, obviously, which is part of why I've been doing the careers mentoring scheme that you were on, which was brilliant. I did a history and French joint honours degree all the way back in 2000 to 2004. Then I did a postgraduate qualification, but I had a couple of years before I did that. It working partly in the industry, partly not. And then I went to City University in London and did a postgraduate diploma in broadcast journalism, which you could have as a master's as well, but I decided to keep it as a PG dip.
Excellent. So, obviously the sector changes quite a lot. So at the moment, would you suggest that a master's, PG dip, like an NCTJ course, is there any specific way which is the best way into the industry, or do you think that each one has their merits?
I think it's always been a mix, this career. It's a very competitive career. It's difficult to get into. It involves lots of persistence and antisocial hours and things like that, and not very good pay at the beginning. So it's always been the sort of career that you've really got to want to do, put it like that. So there are quite a lot of different routes in, and as far as I can see, it's sort of the same, is that some people come from that degree postgrad route because it gave me a really good grounding, and it fitted in with what I wanted, because I didn't want to do a postgrad straight away. So I went off and did some other work and some work experience and some traveling, and then I came back. Some people I know who wanted to definitely do it straight off, they went and did a journalism degree. People do that. I wanted to do a more academic degree because that's just always what I'd wanted to do. I'd always wanted to do a language, for instance. And then I'm mentoring two brilliant young Facebook-sponsored journalists at the moment who are doing NCTJ courses, who have been doing that alongside their sort of apprenticeship, and they are brilliant. And that's been a great route in for them as a younger journalist. I mean, they're both graduates, so that they've got university degrees already, and then they've gone on to do this. So there's lots of different ways. I do think that I do know people who have just gone and worked somewhere, but I think that's less common, just because it is so competitive, especially as a journalist. That I'm not saying it's impossible, because it isn't, because I know those people, but I think not to have any sort of route in at all is quite rare, because there are some really key bits of training you have to do as well. So, one way or another, you're going to get those, but there are different ways of getting them.
Yeah, that sounds good. So what would you recommend to students at the moment in terms of extracurricular activities, work experience, and skills that they can work on for their applications, whether that be to PG Dip Ed or whether they're just trying to get into the industry a few years on? So what could people do at the moment to really get a great journalistic CV?
Well, there is nothing like doing the actual job or finding a way around it if you can't be paid for it. And I mean, I think most people I know have done something, whether it's student journalism like that you've done, which is brilliant. It's great to get involved in student radio or student newspapers. But it might not be that, it might be something that you do externally, especially these days. And this is different from even, 20 years ago. You might be putting your own sort of journalism out there somewhere. You might have your own like blog or things that you are sharing on social media, stories that you're finding out about. It's just, you've got to show that you have a passion for telling people stories and getting out there and talking to people. And I think it's the way you do that. There's lots of different free and work experience-y ways you can do that, and you have to keep banging on the door, because that's competitive as well. Even getting into work for free can be competitive. But approach people, try and put yourself in the right places. People like me, I'm always willing to sort of be on the end of an email to someone if they wanted some advice. And there are lots of people. It's just finding those people, sort of identify something you're interested in and try and find someone that you could talk to about it. And then, things like all the different sort of student journalism things you can do around it are excellent. And, you know, it's not a sort of, oh, that's it, I applied for this job and I get it sort of career. It can be, but that's rarer. It's more you sort of finding ways around the edges to show that you really, really want to do it.
Yeah, definitely. And as you mentioned there, because the industry's changed quite a lot and move away from print journalism into online journalism, how would you recommend people can use the internet and social media to sort of build up a bit of a portfolio of work at the moment, especially during the pandemic when you can't walk into your local newspaper anymore and ask for work experience?
Yeah, it's really hard. And I think this, you know, obviously this 12 months has been hard for all kinds of reasons, but it's really hard for young people, for students, for people trying to start, like, take that first step on their career. You know, it's difficult. There's people that I would have had in shadowing me in the last 12 months that simply haven't been able to, you know, because we're not allowed, and I'm not going out and about as much as I would have been. So I think it's still that demonstration that you are really enthusiastic and keen to tell stories. However you can do that, whether it's showing an interest in something, whether it's getting involved in a campaign, or and maybe doing some of their social media for them, or you know, showing ways that you want to communicate in that way and tell those stories. And it is very different from when I was starting, because it is, even in that time, it's changed vastly. But I think having a bit of a presence and getting involved in things at uni, or as you know, remotely even, that you can do, is really, really good. And I think volunteering is a good thing for journalism anyway. If there's anything you can do to help charities or whatever with their communications, or just things like that you could do, where you find people, you network with people, and then you're putting a little bit out there, I think is great, because it shows that you've really made an effort. And keep in touch, you know, even though if you can't come into traditional newsrooms at the moment, try and make inroads in finding some people that you can chat to for when it does open up again.
Yeah, definitely. I think, as you said, volunteering is very important, and this is something which I realise as well, is that a lot of the work you're going to need to do is going to be unpaid, which probably has some issues with accessibility. So what would be your recommendations in terms of balancing unpaid work and work?
It's a really difficult one, and it's something that I know that has been thought about more in the last few years in big corporations like the BBC and other mainstream broadcasters, and generally, is that if you want to get more diversity of thought into your organisation, then you need to think about actually some of the accessibility issues around who can and can't do that job, because, like you say, some people simply can't afford to work for free. And I think there is more of an awareness that needs to change a little bit. The problem is it's so competitive that there'll always be people that can do that. But I mean, so I know someone who started off a brilliant initiative called PressPad, which is, if you can get work experience, then they will find you. It's a bit like couch surfing, but it's staying with people who are journalists too. They will try and find you some accommodation for free. So you're helping out, you're sort of paying back really something to someone who maybe wants to do some unpaid work, but they can't afford to go and book a hotel or whatever, which is a really good initiative. So there's quite a lot of that around now. It's just looking for it and finding it and seeking out where you can, you know, do the sort of, you might have to do another job and do a bit of that at the same time. And we all did that, and that's fine. But I do completely take the point that it's much easier for someone who's got that the financial backing of someone else to go and do that, and that does need to change. And I think there are more initiatives out there now that do provide things like bursaries. I know places like some social media platforms are doing their own bursaries as well now, and yeah, there are some things around there. But again, I would always, if I see anything like that, I'm always trying to put it out there on my social media, for instance, to try and help, you know, the next generation of journalists that come around.
Yeah, no, that's really good to hear that there's kind of growing awareness for that. Because you work for the BBC, and that's such a powerhouse of media, and I feel like will be for a long time. How did you first get into the BBC?
So I started doing work experience way before I'd even done my postgrad, because I liked radio, I liked broadcast, and I wanted to know more about it. So I got in touch with my local radio station in Birmingham while I was a student. So again, it was like I was a student doing French and history, but I knew I was interested in radio. So I went off, I did some hospital radio, and I sort of just kept pestering them until they let me turn up. And they had something called the Action Desk then, which was almost like a consumer program. And you could go and volunteer and take the phone calls and do a little roundup at the end on the radio. So that was like my very first sort of radio experience with the BBC. And then I left and went off and did other things, but I ended up getting a job there, you know, eventually about 8 years later, because I'd done my postgrad, I'd done other things, but also they could see how much I wanted to do it because I'd done things like that. So that was a good opportunity. That doesn't exist anymore, but there are some similar things like that, and there are ways of getting in. It's difficult because the BBC is, again, highly competitive, but it's a big employer. So there are lots of different jobs. And I've left the BBC several times to go to other jobs as well. So I have experience of like lots of different sort of organisations. What I like about the BBC is that it has a broad spectrum of different things, and you might know that you want to be the Middle East editor, you know, at Sky, and that's it, and you go on one path. But I was never like that. I wanted to just do lots of different things. So the BBC's been brilliant for that, and I've ended up in a specialism, which is politics, which I really enjoy. But I've also ended up being diverse, being able to present radio. So I present a radio show every Friday afternoon, do TV correspondent work, do bigger documentaries and investigations, and do different kinds of journalism. And I think that was what was so attractive to me. So yeah, I did my postgrad, then I did some more work experience for free, then I did a bit more, and then I ended up getting my first contract, which was just for like 2 months. And then I didn't get a job off the back of that, and I was devastated, and I left and I went down to Cardiff. So, you know, these things happen, and I got a job in music radio, worked for XFM, and then a job came up and I went back to the BBC and I worked there for 3 years before leaving again, to move to London to go to LBC, so a different type of radio station and big talk radio station. I was their chief reporter for a while. And then the political job came up and I started doing more national news and got back into the BBC that way. So, you know, there's lots of different routes you can take, but it's rare to just go and get a staff job, as they call it, a continuous job immediately. You know, it's about getting in there, freelancing, them getting to know you, then you get a small contract, then you get a longer contract, then that can go on for a little while.
Yeah.
But that's sort of the way it is. But if you really want to do it, then you should be able to get in there. And again, I think there are ways now, there's more apprenticeships and there's more sort of different schemes that the BBC are doing to try and attract even more younger, different background people.
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting to hear how diverse your career has been. I think also it's very clear that you really enjoy your career. So what do you think is the absolute best thing about being a journalist?
Oh, I love my job. I just don't want to do anything else. So that should tell you it after 10 years or whatever it is, 11 years. The best thing about being a journalist is just that you don't know what's going to happen any day. Obviously, coronavirus has been very different and very hard in some ways because we've been at home more. And I hate that because I just want to be out and about talking to people. But it's still been very busy. And it's been very important because we are relaying really important information and news and looking at what's happening and examining that and telling people's stories. So it's felt really crucial, difficult at times, but crucial. And it's the same in the way that you never know what's going to happen any day. You don't know what story is going to come up. I don't know who's going to drop me a tweet or an Instagram message saying, have you heard about this? Or this has happened to me. Because of course, the more established you get, the more you do get people coming to you with their stories as well, which is a privilege, you know, because you get to look at that and to talk to them and to find out what the story is and to look behind the surface sometimes and find out whether something's gone wrong or what's gone wrong and what's happened there. And that variety and the ability to be in other people's spheres that you wouldn't normally be is just an absolute privilege. And I can't imagine there's another job like that, really.
Yeah, definitely. So to conclude, what is the one little piece of advice that you would give to students who, in your position, the University of Birmingham, not studying any degree related to journalism, to end up in a position like you?
Well, I think, and I said this about working for free, I'd say it's be really nice and amenable, so you get on with people. Be really passionate about the fact you want to do it and believe you can, because you can. Anyone who really wants to do this can do it. Okay, you've got to believe that you are the sort of person that wants to tell people stories, and accept that you might have to do a bit of, you know, some of the slog at first. However, work for free for a bit, but not for too long. Once people start asking you for things, then you should be getting paid. That's kind of what I've always said. You approach, you get in there, but once it's like, okay, they want you back or they'd like you to do this, you should be making sure that you know your own worth as well. So, you know, that's a good stick to go by. But I just say, believe that you will get there. Believe that you'll get there if you really want to do it.
Thank you so much. On behalf of Red Brick members, I'd like to say thank you for giving this advice today, and hopefully everyone else's journalistic careers follow yours, and you're a leading example for us. So thank you for coming today, Kat.
Thank you. It's so nice to talk to you all. Good luck, everyone. And as I said, anyone wants to get in touch with me, I'm at Stanchers on Twitter, which is STANCHERS. So just drop me a DM. My DMs are open.